Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I am your host, Richard Kaufman, and we are live. I had to do that because one of my best friends, Marshall, live, always told me if you want to get pumped up, do that. So people, this is going to be an amazing episode. I'm so pumped up. They say don't meet your heroes. Well, that's bullshit because this gentleman here has taught me so much about public speaking and how to get my message out. And guys, you know what the number one fear in the world is? Public speaking. And if you watch till the end of this video, we're going to teach you how to master speaking. Brenden, my brother, welcome to the show. How are you?
Very good, brother. Thanks so much for having me, Richard. And what a kind and awfully generous introduction. It's great to be on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Like I said, before I knew we were coming on, I think we got scheduled like 6 weeks ago. I've binge watched every episode of your YouTube channel, trying to become a better speaker, better orator, better talker, better father, better husband, because the more you communicate, the better life is. So I just want to say thank you, and we'll talk about your YouTube channel in a minute. But tell us a little bit about where you come from, where you grew up, because you don't look like a kid from New Jersey like me. So, so tell me a little bit about you and how did you get into this whole crazy world of public speaking?
Yeah, for sure, Richard. So the background me, I'm born and raised in Montreal, which is a city based in Canada. So it's around 8 hour drive from New York City. But my parents were born in Sri Lanka, which is a small country south of India. And they immigrated from Sri Lanka to Canada in the early 90s. But I was lucky enough to be born in Canada. So that's the background there. In terms of how I got into Master Talk, though, Richard, it was largely an accident. I went to business school for accounting, funny enough, which is literally the opposite of what I do today. And I thought I was going to be a numbers guy. But then I start doing this accounting degree, and I start doing homework, and I start competing in these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, Richard, but for nerds. So while other guys my age are playing rugby or baseball or basketball or football, some other sport you probably wouldn't see me playing, I wasn't one of those guys. I did presentations competitively, and that's how I learned how to speak. But then as I got older, I started coaching a bunch of students on how to communicate really effectively. And I accidentally developed a gift for communication coaching. And then I had the idea for the YouTube channel because I thought, no one's really sharing this information for free for people who can't afford a communication coach like me. So I started making videos in my mom's basement. I called it Master Talk, and it just turned into something I never could have imagined, brother.
All right, guys, we got to go. It's been a great episode. First of all, I knew I liked you from day one because my best friend, my mentor, his first name is Kumar. And he's somebody that I really love and respect. And he taught me everything I am to become a man and a businessman. So once I seen your last name, I'm like, yeah, there's a connection there somewhere. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on. I know I had a bunch of time things going on, but I'm so grateful for the time that we're spending together. So now let me ask you a question because, as we know, I got an 11-year-old child, I got a 20-year-old boy, and I got an 18-year-old boy. And both of my one son is taking to public speaking classes in court because he wants to be a public speaker, and he wrote a book. So he wants to be able to orate and not only just write. And my other son, he's got autism. He don't want to talk to nobody. So, and my daughter is 11 years old, and she loves to being in front of people like her father. She loves to speak. And I think that in the future, or even in the present, with the way TikTok is, with the way Reels is, with the way social media is, with the way business is going, where short-term and long-term video are king and no longer just static pictures, I think we need to get our children to start learning how to public speak, or even just being able to talk and not just this and this. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure, Richard. Well, first of all, yeah, I love the story that you told through your children. Right. I definitely think communication is really important. I don't think humanity has changed that much generation from generation. It's just the reason why a lot of younger people don't communicate as often is simply because of convenience. So 25 years ago, if you wanted to ask somebody on a date, you don't really have a choice. You have to go up to them and ask them out on a date. Whereas today, you have the optionality of swiping on apps. So people just opt for the easier thing. Same thing with phone calls. Like 30 years ago, you kind of have to get on a phone call. There's another option if you want to interact with people. Whereas now you have the option of texting. So people just opt for the easier thing. And that's just true across human beings in general. But that's also why we need to work on our communication skills so that we can lever off that big difference because we're just practicing a lot less than we used to. But there's also a big positive that I feel a lot of people don't talk about on the tech side, Richard, which is simply, hey, like because of this tech, there's a lot of new things that we can create with communication that didn't exist before. Best example is this conversation. If Zoom or StreamYard wasn't really a technology and wasn't even a thing 15 years ago, this conversation wouldn't exist. The chances of us meeting is super, super low. But the other piece is it's a lot easier now for us to find our tribe. So if we have a passion for pen collecting, it's really easy to find an online forum of other pen collectors and meet up with them and actually build a meaningful relationship with them in person. So that's the magic as well that we can leverage.
And for me, I'm a big relationship guy, but I'm also a 54-year-old guy. So, but I'm very up to date on all the tech and all that stuff. But I see that, especially on LinkedIn, because that's where I do most of my damage is on LinkedIn. I think we got something like 30,000 followers. But I see a lot of people on LinkedIn spam the shit crap out of you. I try not to curse, but it's my show, so I can't. They spam the hell out of you instead of just saying, "Hey, Brenden, how you doing? I love the post that you put out today," and that's it. And so I think for me, I build relationships. That's why I think I've become as successful as I am because I'm building relationships instead of just trying to hit it and quit it on social media.
I love that approach, right, Richard? You know, for me, the way that I've always thought about it is you don't get to talk to a lot of people in your life. Like, let's see, the average person, you're different because you're interviewing so many amazing people on the show. But I'd say for most of us listening to this, if we're lucky, we'll meet 100 new people every year, maybe one every 2 to 3 days. So if we live 50 more years, so let's say we're all 40 years old or 30 years old, and we live until 80 or 90 years old, 50 years times 100 people a year is 5,000 people, brother. So out of 8 billion people, you only get to shake hands with 5,000 in general. So the question we need to ask ourselves is who do we want those 5,000 people to be? So going to your point, you know, for me, it's always been a question of what can we do to build deeper, meaningful relationships with the people who are already in love with us and what we're doing and what we're sharing with the world and building a 10 times deeper relationship with them. Like it makes a lot more sense to invest more time into you as an example versus somebody who doesn't care about public speaking, who doesn't care about master talk or what I'm building. So I encourage everyone else to embody that principle too, in the same way that you mentioned, hey, people are just kind of DMing back and forth on LinkedIn. You could say, who are those 5 people that are already bought into me? And how do I have more meaningful conversations with them so they introduce me to the best people in their network?
And and that's something that I've had to learn over. I think, like I said, I think you're like my 1,000th and one interview. I've had to learn to listen, and I believe that God gives you 2 ears and one mouth for a reason, so you can listen twice as much as you speak. And I think a lot of people that do speak, they speak over people, or they speak at people. They don't speak to people. Like when I go to speak at an event, I'll get there 2 hours early. I'll greet people. I'll talk to them. I'll sit down, have a cup of coffee and a donut with them. I'll get to know them. This way, when I go up on stage, whether it's in front of 5,000, 100,000 people, I'm already comfortable because I've already talked to Joe, Nancy, Frank. You know what I'm saying? So I think one thing we need to start learning is to listen because especially if you're in business, people are going to tell you what they want to buy if you just listen. But also, for me, I'm an empath. That's what I am. I'm the empathy guy. If I was going to be a superhero, that's who I'd be, empathy man. So I believe that we need to be able to speak, but also be able to listen twice as much as we speak. Your thoughts?
I mean, I completely agree with that, Richard. The only layer I'll add on top of that is how do we practice listening? You know, we all know the importance of it, but it's like, how do I get results with listening really quickly? So I invented a strategy that people can copy paste. I call it the goals call. So here's what you do. You find somebody you
As
love.
you see, I'm writing this down. So as you
Yeah,
see,
yeah, I noticed. Obviously, the best teacher is often the best student, and you embody that fully, Richard. So that's really the key: is pick somebody you love, anybody. It could be a friend, it could be a colleague at work, it could be a family member, just somebody you adore, and you sit them down for 45 minutes. So you book a 45-minute one-on-one session with them. And you start the call by asking them, hey, tell me what your top 3 goals are for the year and why each of those goals are personally important to you. So that person might spend 5 minutes, Richard, at the beginning of the call, just writing out, okay, these are my 3 goals. This is why those goals are important to me. This is why I find them valuable. So that's the first part. The second part is you restate everything you heard. So let's say I did this with you. Just to make sure I got this, Richard, you mentioned that these are your top 3 goals, A, B, C, and this is why these are important to you. So I restate everything you say word for word after taking a bunch of notes. Then I go, did I get that? And then you'll say, okay, yes, and I want to add these things. And then for the remainder of the 40-minute call, Richard, this is the most important point. You are not allowed to give advice. You're not allowed to give any advice whatsoever on their goals. The only things you're allowed to do are 1, ask them clarifying questions about their goals, and 2, restating their answers. Example, let's say you told me your goal was to grow your coffee brand, to sell more coffee, right? That I know you're going to talk about later in the show. So I would ask you things like that you don't have to answer today. Like how many coffee bags do you want to sell next year? How many did you sell this year? How many did you sell last year? So these are examples of clarifying questions. And then I go, okay, you said you sold X amount of bags. Oh, okay, you say you want to sell, I don't know, 10 million bags next year, whatever the number is. And then throughout the whole 45 minutes, that's all you're doing. You're asking them clarifying questions around their goals. But here's the trick, Richard. If you do this with 10 different people and you sit them down for 45 minutes 10 different times, your listening skills will improve exponentially.
and I love that. And for me, I lost 80% of my vision 3 years ago, and my hearing got better. Not according to my wife, but my hearing got better. So, like when I have a superstar on like you, I actually can hang on every word that you say. Just like you said my name 7 times so far. And a lot of people, when they're having a conversation, don't even mention the other person's name. And the other person, that's their favorite word, is their name, and you're not even acknowledging them. So I really love that you are definitely hitting on that. But also you say, you're also open, you're asking open-ended questions to where a lot of people, like I was with GNC for over 30 years, you know, other salesmen would be like, hey, you know, can I help you today? It's either no or yes. You would come in and I'd be like, hey, bro, how's your day going? What kind of products do you use? You can tell me no. That doesn't make sense. So it opens up dialogue. And a lot of people don't want to open up dialogue and ask open-ended questions. So that's what you're talking about?
That's exactly it, Richard. And then when you have these conversations, what you're doing is the person who's sitting on the other side of, let's say, the goals call example I gave goes, wow, no one's really asked me that question around my weight loss goal, around my income goal, or around my relationship goal. This person really cares about me. That's the first piece. And then the second part of that, the exercise, is because you're not allowed to give advice and you're only allowed to ask questions and repeat what they said, you get so good at listening because you're practicing the right thing. Whereas the issue we have in the real world is, let's say I practice listening, let's say we're just having a coffee together and there's no goals, we're just having a chat. The problem is half of my brain is thinking about something smart to answer, respond to what you're saying, and the other half is spending time listening to you. So when we do a goals call, we can practice 100% of our time just on listening, since we don't actually have to respond with anything intelligent. We just have to ask them questions and listen to them. So we're practicing one thing at a time, and that's really what's missing with a lot of us, and why we don't see a lot of great results with listening in general.
Okay, so then let me ask you a question because from your background and from where you come from and your mom and your dad and very humble people. I can tell already. I already know it. Very humble, very intelligent people, and then also people from Montreal, very humble, very intelligent. So did that help in you doing what you do because you have a very soothing voice? You have you're not abrasive like there's some speakers I can listen to for a little while and then I'm like, yeah, I'm done. Where I can actually listen to you read my phone book and I'd be happy. So talk to us about how that is, how to, be approachable and actually, talk to people with a nice voice. You don't have to be, there's only one Gary Vee, guys. There's only one, and he's even changing his style right now. So there's only one Gary Vee. You cannot be him. So just be yourself. So what are some of the things that you look for in speakers if you're going to go to see somebody or listen to their YouTube? What do you look for?
Yeah, for sure, Richard. So for me, I think the most important thing here is, to your point, there's no right answer. For me, communication is all about expressing the fully authentic version of who you are, but the best authentic version. So if you want to be a little louder, you can be a little louder. But if you're going as you're speaking, doesn't matter if you're introverted or you're extroverted. You got to get rid of those uhs. Same thing with eye contact, right? Whether you're introverted or extroverted. If you're not looking at the camera, you're not showing the energy, you're not showing the engagement, there's something missing here. So there's what's objective and then what's subjective. So objective is what I just talked about, right? Smiling a little bit more, vocal tones, etc. The other piece is style. And style is something that you develop over time. Like, for example, now my voice is pretty soothing, but it wasn't like that at the beginning of my career. I'm a pretty hard charging A type, especially with clients. I'm very like aggressive in your face. Let's get the result. But when I would get feedback from my friends, they'd say, yeah, that works like with people who are in your circle. But if you want to be a public figure, you need to learn how to change your vocal tones so you can reach a wider range of people. So I wasn't like this from the beginning. Now I've smoothened out my vocabulary, my way of speaking, because I'm willing to take that feedback. Hey, Brenden, you don't sound like honey. You sound like you want to attack all of us. So you need to change your approach. So I change. And the last piece on this, and I think my parents did play some role in that, where when you come from humble beginnings, like parents were factory workers, you're just more relatable to the everyday person. So because of that, my content is more relatable to the everyday person. And then the last piece to that, Richard, is when you get feedback, you're able to change the way you speak. I've always believed that the best communicators are chameleons, in the sense that they're able to adapt their energy based on the person we're speaking to. And you're the best example of this, because I'll usually get three different types of hosts. Let's say when I'm on a show, the first type is exactly like you: high energy, super vivacious. I love it, right? Brenden, you're here. This is going to be great. I love this show. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just who you are. That's your personality. So I'm matching your energy, which is more my natural self. I'm a lot more high energy like you, anyways. Then you have the second type, who's more in the middle, more ambiverted. So they'll go low, they'll go high, they'll go low, they'll go high. But then you have the third type, Richard, which is Paula, super shy, doesn't want to talk that much. It's her first podcast. She's deathly afraid about interviewing me. So if I come on the show and I go, "What's up, Paula?" I'm just using her as an example, just a random name. And she goes, "Hi, Brenden. It's great to be here." I change my vocal tones automatically to this, from this to, "Oh, Paula, is this your first intro? I'm so excited to be here. I can't wait for the show." So notice I'm changing, I'm adapting my energy to the person I'm speaking to.
And and I agree with that. I mean, I'm only ninth grade dropout, and I tell everybody knows my story. But I've read over 6,000 books, and I got 15 going at one time. So who am I to be able to interview people like you, David Meltzer, the authors of Rich Dad Poor Dad, millionaires, billionaires, and some of them you have to change the way you speak or the way you orate. Like you said, you have to you got to go with the room that you're in. But I know because I'm reading a book. I just finished one book by Brenden Kane, and I'm listening to another book by his new book, Hook Point. And if you're doing video, or if you're doing an interview, and if they're not hooked in the first 3 seconds, it's over. It's a wrap. Next swipe. You know what I mean? So I think, especially in the public speaking world, YouTube, podcasting, if you don't catch them in the first 3 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds, it's a wrap, right?
I definitely feel there's some truth to that, Richard, which is you have to be able to hook in your audience. Because at the end of the day, a lot of us, we don't think enough about this question. Why should we listen to you?
Mm-hmm.
And when we ask ourselves this question to us, right, to our message, that's what makes us more relatable. And the credit, frankly, that people like Gary Vaynerchuk have is that he's really good at listening to his audience, understanding what they want. Because at the beginning of his speaking journey, a lot of his content, you probably already know this because you've watched all my videos, is at the beginning when he started sharing ideas, it was a lot more focused on business advice. Post here 3 times a week, do this twice a day, do this, and it was like a full out media strategy. Whereas he realized when he was talking to his audience, when he was signing books, he was going, hey, like, what are you going to be implementing? He goes, Gary, you don't understand. I don't want to post on social media. Gary's like, what do you mean you don't want to post? You can make so much money, create so much impact. And then John would say, well, what do you mean, Gary? I'm really scared to post on social media. What will my mom think of me? What will my dad think of me? And then his light bulb went off and he said, oh, wait a second, there's an underlying issue now. So now whenever he gives a talk, that's why whenever he speaks, it's always, I could tell you strategies all day, but here's why none of you are going to post on social media. Because you care about your mom thinks of you. You care about what your brother thinks of you. And I was in that category too. And then I listened to him, I took action. So the message here is the more we listen to our audience, the better our messaging becomes. And the better messaging leads to better hooks and content in the 3 to 2 frame. You talked about that. Brenden Kane also talks about in 1 million followers.
And by the way, I got to give my big love to Gary. We had lunch one day, and he's the one that actually started me on the podcast. He's the one that actually made me write my book and put it out. So Gary, I love you. I love you and your mom and your dad. So, but now I want to stop, and I want to thank our sponsors real quick, because I want to dig deep into what you just said. Guys, I was with GNC for over 30 years, in the military for over 23. I love pre-workouts. I loved coffee, but they all tasted like ass. They were horrible. It made me throw up. It just didn't give me the energy. So I decided to come up with my own, which is Vertical Momentum Coffee. Twice the energy, no crash, made by veterans' hands, and 100% of the proceeds go to help veterans struggling with PTSD and homelessness. I make no money off of it. I'm just trying to change the world one veteran at a time. And also, guys, my coffee is also available in New Jersey, a place called Muriel's Trattoria. They're Italian food. They do catering, lunches, dinners. And the best thing is when you go in, you're actually buying from a mom that came over off the boat, literally off the boat from Italy. So she's making your food. It's handmade with love. So, guys, if you love Italian food in New Jersey, check out Muriel's, and I'll drop that link below. So now let's talk about public speaking, because, like you said, I was in the military for 23 years. When we get out as veterans, or we think that we're great public speakers, but we're talking at people, we're barking orders at people, and it's totally different when you get up on the stage and I just hear humana, because I don't know what to say. Like, for me, when I get up on stage, my opening line is, guys, put your wallet away. I'm not here for your wallet. I'm here for your heart. And that pretty much just opens the door to everything else. But for me, like I said, I had to learn to be able to speak to an audience, not as their audiences, but like they're friends of mine. So talk to us, how do you get started being a public speaker? When does it start? How do you start?
For sure, Richard, absolutely. And I love that story that you gave too. It's reaching for the hearts instead of their wallets. Powerful. For me, to keep it simple today, Richard, Because some people might be listening to this and might not even want to be on a stage. So for me, communication is every part of your life. It's not just about speaking or giving a presentation. It's the way that you talk to your family. It's the way that you talk to your business partners, the way that you talk to your colleagues at work. It's the way that you make new friends. It's every moment of your life. And when we realize that, it really helps us show up better for who we are and how we want to share our message. So going back to this, my analogy is simple. Communication is like juggling 18 balls at the same time. One of those balls is facial expressions. One of them is body language. One of them is smiling. One of them is vocal tone variety, storytelling. And the list goes on. And it can get really confusing. So for me, the easy point here is what are the 3 easiest balls to juggle? Because if we can juggle those, it's going to be really easy to become a great speaker. So let's start with ball number 1, which is the random word exercise. Pick a random word, any word you want. It could be phone, or camera, or eyelid, or coffee, or New York City, and create random 60-second presentations out of thin air. And this serves 2 main purposes, Richard. The first purpose is it helps you deal with uncertainty. Life is filled with uncertainty from the way that we talk to our families, from the way that we talk to the people around us. So it gets really nerve wracking. And that's my second point. If you can make sense out of nonsense, you could make sense out of anything. So if you could talk about avocado toast for 30 seconds, you could talk about how to your own expertise or what you do at work a lot easier. Like you could talk about your coffee all day because it's what you do, it's what you sleep, it's what you breathe. So it's a lot easier. And that's what I encourage people to do. Do that 3 to 5 times a day, and I'll challenge all of you to try and get to 100. That's the first drill.
And one thing I love, and I'm so grateful that we get to hang out today. Thank you so much, brother. You have to put in the reps. Even like Ed Milet put in his new book, One More Rep. You have to put in the reps. The people that are great speakers had to put in the reps. They had to go speak. And a lot of people like myself, I've never paid to play, but I volunteered to go help and speak and do all this stuff and not get paid just to get the stage time. Because I'm a big fan of professional wrestlers. I got a lot of friends that are pro wrestlers, and the biggest people that make the biggest money are the best talkers. Ric Flair, people, Dusty Rhodes, people like that can talk. They make more money. They generate more money, but they also put in the reps. They go speak. They went and started speaking. Like for me, I started out. I went to speak at every school, every AA meeting, every rehab, every jail I can go speak at, so I can get the reps. So talk to us about, you got to pay your dues and you got to get in the reps.
Yeah, for sure, Richard. And you brought a lot of great announcements. Wow, I love your commitment, by the way, man. Every school, every jail. I think you're more committed than I am in public speaking, honestly. So I love that. So, for me, to make it simple for people, you don't have to go out. You don't even have to leave your house. That's the way I think about it. For me, it's a couple of things. One is just do the random word exercise at home. If you're just getting started, like you're just like a beginner, don't even worry about finding other stages. Just do the random word exercise, build that momentum. The second piece, and then we can get into how do you start a public speaking career, which is also very simple, is the second exercise is called the question drill. So the question drill is just, we get asked questions all the time in our life, Richard. At school, at work, in our careers, on a podcast like this, but a lot of us are reactive to the questions that life has in store for us. We're not proactive. I'll give you an example. Like we're not prepared for the questions essentially. A few years ago, I remember I started podcasting. I remember some guy asked me, funniest question. He was like, Brenden, where does the fear of communication come from? And I looked at the guy and I was like, I don't know, man. New York City, Florida? You tell me. I don't know where it comes from. So I didn't have a good answer. So how did I fix this, Richard? Every single day, for 5 minutes, I answered one question that I thought the world would ask me about my expertise, my products, or my services. So day 1 is, what's your vision for Master Talk? Day 2 is, what tips do you have on how to speak? Day 3 was, what tips do you have for introverts? But if you answer one question, Richard, every single day for 5 minutes and you do it for a year, you'll have answered 365 questions about your industry, and you'll be bulletproof. And then the third tip, for those of you going to your point who want to start a public speaking career, I'll literally tell you what I do, and I still do it to this day. A free workshop. Just host a free workshop on whatever topic you want. You want to be a health guru? Do it on health. You want to talk about something else? Talk about something else. Do a 90 minutes, not even 90 minutes actually. Do a 45-minute Zoom call that's free and just invite your friends to attend it. I still do that to this day every 2 weeks. And that's how I get most of my paid speaking gigs, because people come to the free workshop, they go, "Wow, this kid's really good." And then they call me 3 weeks later, or even 6 months later, and they go, "Brenden, I came to your free workshop. You were really good. Can I hire you to come speak at my company?" And that's it. Just be so good that people can't ignore you.
I love that. And, I was just thinking, for me, when I got to sit down and chat with Dean Graziosi, and he asked the 7 questions, the 7 whys, that changed my whole life, my business, my marriage. The 7 whys changed my everything that I do. And I think if we were able to do that, because I had a podcast, and I'm ashamed to say this, but I had a podcast. It's called Success Your Why Powers Your How. I had 300 episodes until I realized it wasn't on Apple. But the podcast was called Success Your Why Powers Your How. And when I talked to him and he asked me the 7 whys, I think if we can just do that and have somebody ask us the 7 whys of what we're doing and go that deep, I think that's life changing. Is that what you're talking about? The whys?
Absolutely, Richard. I mean, I've done that exercise. It's super, super powerful. I think Dean's really onto something with the 7 whys. But really what we're going through is that and potential questions that we can get asked. So let me give an example with your brand, right? With the incredible coffee you have. Is like people will ask you questions around the product. How much is it? Where's the coffee sourced from? How do you know it's so much better than everything else? So just questions, right? They'll get asked. So if you have the answers in advance, there isn't a question that will worry you, and you'll be able to just sell more product and create more impact with the veterans that you're serving. So it's the same thing with us, right? For everyone listening, for what your career is, or what you're selling, or what you're really passionate about, start making a list of questions that you feel people will ask you. Like when people get on a sales call with me around communication coaching, which is what I sell, so I can create free resources, the ones that you've seen in preparation for the show. Well, the reason I can do that for free is because I coach a lot of elite executives and CEOs that pay me money. So for those types of sales calls, I'm practicing the question drill all day long, so that when I get onto those calls, I'm super solid and they choose me as their coach instead of another coach. So I can use that money and really create impact, not just for myself, but for the people around me. And that's really the key. So I encourage all of you to implement the question drill, not just in the context of, personal life, but also in professional life too. So you get financial results from doing it too.
I love it. Now, for me, I got my start in selling timeshares. Yes, I did. I sold timeshares and I crushed it. And the reason why I did crush it is by listening to people like Gary Vee, Tony Robbins, people like that. Because if you put a script in front of me, I'm going to tailor that script instead of just because there'll be like 8 timeshares salespeople, and you'll hear them all doing the same script word for word. They're not putting any feeling into it, and either putting any of their own selves into it, and they wonder why they're not crushing it. Because I know that if I get a phone call and somebody's like, yeah, blah 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 blah, and they're reading right off the script. They're not even, like, "Hey, Rich, how you doing, bro? What's going on?" So talk to us, because a lot of guys and girls, when we get out of the military, we take jobs as salespeople. They throw out a script, and we just read the script and expect them to get sales. Where for me, I went with the script, but I made it my own. You know what I'm trying to say? So talk to us a little bit about that.
1000%, Richard. Really, what you're speaking to here, if you try and be like everyone else, you're going to get the same results as everyone else gets. right? So those 8 timeshare reps that you talked about, if you're all using the same script, you're all going to get the same result, which isn't that great. So if you want to stand out, you have to make something your own. And the best way to do this, honestly, and it has very little to do with the script, surprisingly, is to do what you do best, Richard, which is, are you having 5-hour dinner conversations with the people you're actually trying to sell to? This is what shocks me the most about most sales reps is they don't go back to the people they sold to and say, why did you actually buy this? Like, let me give you like a super simple example. I started coaching CEOs when I was 22 years old. So it was really hard for me to convince people to buy into me. So I would get on calls, get rejected back and forth, back and forth. This is before the YouTube channel kind of took off and I have the credibility that I have today. But it wasn't the case even 5 years ago or 6 years ago. So I would cut the pavement, just go through every executive they got. I don't want to hire you, you're too young. And then eventually there's one person who goes, hey, I think you're the guy. I think you're the right person for me. And then after I got him the result, I just sat him down in person or on a Zoom call. And I just said, how would you explain the value of this product to me? And he would go, like, try and sell me on my own product. That's literally what I do with my clients. And then he would go, okay, here's why people will buy from you, because this solved my problem like this, like this, like this. And I'm taking notes. I was like, why don't I use this in the script? That's really good. And then when I met somebody else who looked exactly like that person, think Indian technology professional, think female executive in tech. When I met somebody else who looked exactly like that person, Richard, I just sold them on the same script. Let me just tell your life story, A, B, C. And they go, wow, it's almost as if you could read my mind. So it's the same thing with sales in general. The biggest mistake that most people make in sales is they do not go back to the people that they already sold to, that already love them. And you ask them, hey, if you were to help me sell somebody else, what tips would you give me? And use that information to personalize your script in a way that fits your sales style.
And if we ended it right now, that would bomb it up right there. But now let me, because I watch Shark Tank. I watch any kind of business shows because I'm always trying to get knowledge. And we were watching I think it's called Food Stars or something like that this week with one of the major chefs, and their task was to build and brand a bottle of wine. And when you read the bottle of wine, he had to tell people what the bottle of wine meant. And usually, if you have to tell somebody, if you don't simplify it to dumb it down, you're not going to sell much at all. And I think for me, like if I got a lot of friends, one of my friends, Daniel Gomez, got a great podcast. Daniel Gomez Inspires, but he works with companies that are Lamborghini dealers, Ferrari dealers, high-end vehicles. And if a guy's walking in or buy a Ferrari or Lambo, he doesn't care how many cylinders it's got. He's buying it for the benefits. He's not buying it for the intricacies. And a lot of us get so wrapped up in the intricacies instead of the benefits that people just eyes glass over. And then that they'll use that famous word, I'll think about it. So talk about, sometimes selling the benefits and not the intricacies of a sale.
Absolutely, Richard. A lot of people make this mistake, including me earlier in my career, where we focus too much on the features instead of the benefits. We focus too much on the flight and the seat that you're going to be sitting on the flight instead of the destination. Where are you actually going? And selling that dream that people want. That's why it's so important to sit back and say, why did you actually buy my product? What was the value you got? Because what we think is the value of our product is almost always completely different from the buyer's perspective, from the person who actually buys the product. So from my perspective, yeah, communication coaching might be, good way for us to instill more confidence. Maybe it's a way for me to make more money. But from the client's perspective, it's like a rebirth of their life. Like they go from somebody who's really shy, introverted to empowering themselves, not just in their careers, but frankly, every area of your life. It's like they're almost taking back ownership of their life. And I was like, I never really thought of it that way. Because I struggle with speaking, but not at the level that a lot of the people I work with did. So I never really understood that until I talked to them. It's the same thing with the Lamborghini example. Like the founder of Lamborghini is a car nerd, right? He loves the little intricacies of the engine, everything, because for him it's a work of art. Because the car business is really tough. So if you're in high luxury, it means you love the intricacies. But the person buying the car, some of them care for sure, maybe 5 to 10% of them, but the large majority who are buying these products are not buying it because they have the same love of the intricacies and the small little benefits that the founder saw when manufacturing the car, but rather the social benefit that the car gives them, the social status upgrade that they get from the car, or just the joie de vie, as we say in French, the joy of life that comes from going into a fast car and really enjoying that experience and showing us that we made it. So when we understand those benefits, then we really can sell more effectively to the right person.
And like we were talking about earlier, building relationships with your, I don't like calling them fans, I call them friends. I don't have fans, I got friends. But somebody like Taylor Swift selling out worldwide, but she will sometimes have private concerts at her house, invite the regular Joe Schmo for free to come in, have s'mores, come hang out, and build a relationship. That's why she's so loved. That's why her tickets are getting like $3,000, $15,000 a ticket, because she's so loved and because she cares about her people, which like I said, I consider people my friends. So please talk about that. How once you build relationships, like I had somebody that I have my podcast. I think we have almost 600 reviews, 600 5-star reviews, and I got one bad one, and those 599 people jumped on that one bad person just because they know that, wait a minute, you're calling Richard this one thing. He's total opposite of what you just said. So, that's why if you ever get somebody that, like, I just wanted to took my wife to go see Barry Manilow. If you say something bad about Barry Manilow, there's 80 old women coming to beat your ass because they love him and he's built relationships. Just like if you say something bad about Taylor Swift in public, you'll probably get pummeled because she's built those relationships. So talk about building relationships in business for the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, for sure, Richard. I mean, I completely agree with what you shared, which is Kevin Kelly calls this 1,000 true fans. He used to be the editor of Wired
Mm-hmm.
magazine, and he wrote this amazing article where he basically argues that you don't need a lot of people to fall in love with you for you to build a really sustainable business and do what you love full time. A lot of people, they think you need 10 million people to go full time on your dreams, when the answer is actually 1,000. You've got 1,000 people who just adore you. And his definition of it is they'll come to every concert. They'll pay for anything that you buy. So let's say they spend even $100 on you every single year. That's $100,000 off of 1,000 different people. And that's more than enough for a lot of us to make a living doing what we love. And in my case, I'm very fortunate. It's not even 1,000 true fans. It's 100. If you have 100 who are willing to pay a few $1,000s to work with you privately, then you're off to the races. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this, Richard, because that's why it's so important for you to build deeper relationships with your fans, because you don't need that many. A lot of us, the reason we don't do it is because we think it's a lot of work, but it really isn't. Like if you just build a relationship, like a powerful relationship with the right 1,000 people, in the same way we're building a relationship together right now. Well, if I know, actually, I'll tell you a fun story around this. When I started my YouTube channel, Richard, my philosophy was really simple, which really plays into what you said. Even if I had to guest on 10,000 podcasts, that was my mindset at the beginning of this journey. 10,000 podcasts, and you were the only person listening to me, which obviously isn't the case here because you've had a lot of success with the show. But let's say you were the only guy listening to me, and I was just talking to you for 45 minutes. At the very least, I would make a friend in you, and you would share master talk to 5, 10 people. But if you do that 10,000 times and 5 to 10 people get shared out the content, you'll have 100,000 followers. It's just most people are not willing to do those reps. They're not really willing to put into time. And I'll give you one last tip on this that I do. That's very easy. So whenever somebody follows me on social media or someone's a big fan of mine, I have their birthday on my Google Calendar. So let's say I see like there's 5 people's birthdays this week. So what I'll do literally is I'll open my phone on their birthday. I'll open my video camera. I'll put a stupid birthday hat on that I bought for $12 on Amazon, and I'll go, "Hey Richard, guess whose birthday it is today? Oh, is it Obama's birthday today? Oh, Michelle. Oh, wait a second. It's your birthday today. I hope you make it the best birthday ever." And it blows people's minds. And I do that like 200 to 300 times a year. And that's what you got to do to build relationships.
And I love that. And that's something that I use. I'm big Facebook and LinkedIn are my two big ones. I go. That's the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning. I see whose birthday it is, and I direct message him, or I'll put it on. I'll just say, "Hey, bro, I just want to let you know, happy birthday. I love you and I appreciate you." And I do that every day. And if I miss a day, I'll write, "Hey, sorry, happy belated birthday. I just want to let you know that I'm thinking about you." But I use the direct message feature more because I know that they know he's not doing it for everybody else to see. He's doing it because he truly appreciates me. And by the way, when you direct message somebody, because I got a lot of friends that they work for Facebook and in the inner workings, once you direct message somebody, the algorithm automatically puts them at the top of your list. Automatically. So they're going to see all your posts. So even though if you're not doing it to, for that reason, but if you're just letting know that, hey, I haven't seen a post from Richard, and all of a sudden he wished me happy birthday. Now every other post for the next week is Richard. It helps get you back into their minds, and it's free. It takes time. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And the last part is the most important thing. This is not a question of who has the most money to spend on advertising. This is a question of who cares the most. And I think what I've noticed in this conversation that I'm sure a lot of people already knew before I got on this call is it's because you're the nice guy. You're generous. You're showing up that way, and you've done it for 1,000 episodes. It's no wonder why the 599 reviews go after the one negative one. Heck, I'm shocked you even have that one negative one. But that's really the key, right? It's just most people, and that's the ultimate competitive advantage, is the strategy's free. Anyone can do it. Anyone can send birthday video messages like me, right? Pick your top 500 people, your top 300 people. It's probably 200 in my case, and send them video messages every year. Just a 20-second video message. But that's really the key. That's why my favorite quote, one of them anyways, is from Kevin Durant, Richard, and the quote is, "Hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard." And there's a lot of talented people out there who do not put in the time. So I don't consider myself talented. I think I just work a lot harder than everyone else in my industry. So I got the results that most people in the industry didn't get.
I love it. And then we're going to talk about what you got going on. But I just want to hit the point. A lot of people don't realize that when Gary was first starting his podcast and all that, he would reply to every message. He would reply to every DM, and he would make friends of the haters. But he took the time. It took time, but he would actually, hey, what didn't you like about the video? You said you didn't like it. What didn't you like about it? And if I offended you, I'm sorry. And he'd make a fan. And then all of a sudden, now he's got thousands. He can't even do it anymore. But he started by replying to almost every DM and every message every day. Right?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of that too. And the next level version of the Gary Vee approach is voice messages. So now when people ask me questions, I don't do it all the time, maybe 70-80% of the time. When somebody DMs me and says, "Oh my god, I love your YouTube videos, you're so awesome," I'll send them a voice now. I'll go, "Hey Richard, thanks so much for your comment, man. Brenden here, really, really appreciate you. Thanks so much. Hope you're having a wonderful week." And it blows people's minds because they go, "Oh my god." And it's those reps that really add up over time. And that's really the key to social media relationship building. It's simple, 3 words: outlast your competition. Most people are not willing to do this for 10 years, let alone one. So if you just stay there for 10 years, I've been 4 years into this game. So 6 years later, I'm still going to be here. 10 years later, I'm still going to be here. And because of that, those wins just start accumulating over time. They start compounding over time as well.
And I love it. Now, because I'm a respecter of your time, we said 4:30. So let me ask you, what do you got going on now? Because you always got something going on. You're busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. You always got something going on. So what's going on in your world?
For sure, Richard. For us, it's two things. So one is, of course, the YouTube channel. You could just type Master Talk in one word, and you'll have access to hundreds of free videos online on how to speak for free. And the second way to keep in touch is we run a free communication workshop that I do over Zoom. This is every 2 weeks. It's a live training. It's 90 minutes. I facilitate the call myself. It's a lot of fun. People from across the world attend it. And there's no minimum to attend. Like, you could be a 5-year-old kid. You could be a big time executive. Like, everyone's invited. And the website to register is rockstarcommunicator.com. So just go to rockstarcommunicator.com and register for our next free workshop, and hope to see you there.
All right. So now, for me, my last question is, well, I got two questions just because it's for you. But this is an easy question. This is such an easy question. What are your top 3 speaking? If somebody's listening to us right now, what are the top 3 speaking tips that they can go and use in their next speech? Easy question. Easy question.
For sure, Richard. You can ask me anything, brother. So here's the game. So we learned about the 3 tips, which is the random word exercise, where we pick one word like tissue box. We create random presentations on the spot. Like, we take soapbox, create a 60-second presentation. Question drill. One question every day keeps the doctor away. One fun exercise that all of you could do is pretend you were the guest on this podcast, not me. All of the questions that Richard asked me today, pretend that he asked you those questions. How would you answer those questions for yourself? And that just helps you answer questions really well. I used to do this long before I started Master Talk. It was just fun for me. And then the third one is to create your own stage, right? Just start a Zoom call like I just do. I still do this to this day after 3 years. It's just a lot more people come to it now. Whereas when I started, there was maybe 3 people. But here's the most important tip. Are you booking 15 minutes in your calendar every single day to do these exercises? That's really the problem. Is the best way to speak, Richard, is to speak. People listen to me and listen to you talk all day, but they don't go, oh, you know what? I should really book 15 minutes in my calendar and do the random word exercise a few times a day and do the question drill and actually set up some time this month to send some video messages to people that I love. And that's why the people who take action are the people who get results.
I love it. And before I want to say, I was going to say this earlier, but I totally forgot. Having a traumatic brain injury, that happens a lot. I just want to pray for the people of Canada. With all, guys got what, 414 fires going, and it's really bad out there. So I want to say our thoughts and prayers are going out to your fellow countrymen. I wanted to say it earlier, but I just forgot. So guys, make sure that you check him out. He's very affable, very easy to get in touch with. His LinkedIn profile is fire. I love it. Check out his LinkedIn profile. Make sure you check out his YouTube channel. Because, guys, if I have questions about speaking, that's the man I'm going to. So if I'm going to him, you need to be going to him too. Guys, as you guys know, my tagline is, today I decide. Guys, you make the decision whether to be the victim or to be the victor. It's your decision. So it's your decision today. If you want to be in the background, if you don't want to be up there speaking, if you don't want to be teaching, or you have the choice of following my brother, listening to what he says, and actually do the 15 minutes and make that decision to become the victor and be victorious. And instead of you watching Tony Robbins, one day you could be standing next to Tony Robbins on one of his stages. So I just wanted to say that. Brenden, brother, I'm so grateful for your friendship.
Likewise, brother. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, we got to roll. Remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is but up, and I will catch you tomorrow. Love you guys. Brenden, have a great week, brother.
You too, man.